So we wanted to create a place that families could go, that you're surrounded by other families that understand that whatever is unexpected is more likely to happen than not.
Yeah.
And these things just happen, and also create, activities and things. So one of the first things that we bought was some bounce house slides so that your kid can just go up and down and in a loop for, an hour and end up completely exhausted. And you might actually be able to have a conversation with another parent or read a book or think for a minute because you don't have to worry about kind of where they went and what's going on.
Welcome back to A Mother's Guide Through Autism podcast. I'm your host, Bridget Shipman, and I have a guest today that I'm excited about because what Kim Bays does is such a huge service for our autism community. She lives with her husband, Matt, and twin sons, James and Nathan, and her stepson, Jet, in Southlake, Texas. And the thing I'm excited about is, first of all, welcoming you, Kim, to Mother's Guide Through Autism podcast.
Well, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, the exciting thing and why I'm so happy to have this conversation is because you are doing a great service for our autism community with your Martha's Ranch Foundation. But before you tell us all about that, because all the moms, I coach so many moms, and the thing is that we all feel isolated and are a lot of times afraid to go out in public, especially going on vacation and getting to go do things. And we also have other children that maybe, are not on the spectrum. And so just having a family vacation can be super stressful. But before we go there, I really would love to know about your two sons that are both living with ASD, James and Nathan, and their
Mhm.
autism diagnosis.
Sure. So really their diagnosis was probably a little more over time and softer than some people probably get, because their doctor is one that's kind of very tuned into everything. And so when they weren't talking a whole lot at two, really at that appointment, rather than scaring me with big words and whatever else, he was just like, hey, let's try a couple dietary things. Have you thought about removing dairy, thought about removing gluten, sort of these sorts of things. So as I went back and started doing research, I'm like, okay, this is where we're kind of heading with things. So it was actually, I think, probably good kind of starting down that journey and sort of things that you can tackle as opposed to just looking at a huge problem. So I think that was helpful. And he's been a great asset for years to our family, and actually is on our board now. So
That's wonderful. Yeah. And, I have two sons, but Jacob is neurotypical and Joseph is autistic. And so that has been interesting. But to have two sons that are
mhm.
twins, I imagine your journey has found some challenges.
It has. And I would say that the funny thing is they're fraternal twins. And so they are completely different. And the way that autism presents is completely different. And people ask, like, so how do they function? And it's like, well, Nathan's a whole lot more verbal than James is. But, Nathan would probably, if just left to his own devices, eat nothing but potato chips for the rest of his life. Whereas James would probably, like, pretty quickly, like, go to the refrigerator, find something, and figure out how to make a meal, and hopefully use knives safely. But he, like, at least. So I think they're kind of higher functioning in different ways from one another. They have very different interests on things. James is much more kind of outgoing. Nathan's a little more. He would like to just sit in his room with the TV for as long as you'll let him. I mean, he's social too if you kind of force the issue, but he'd rather not if he doesn't have to. And this is one of our cats, Turbo.
Oh,
Just came to
hello.
visit.
For those of you, if you're watching us on YouTube, you got to see
A
your
flash of a
pet.
big orange cat. So anyway, that
Yeah,
they're very different from one another. So it is both on the same autism journey, sort of, and just how various treatments and things have impacted them has been very different over the years too.
yeah. So would you say you had the same therapies? You said they're both high functioning, or was that
They're
also
both kind of
different?
they're kind of moderately functioning. They function in higher in some areas and lower in others, and kind of and very different from one another in terms of what their strengths and things are. A lot of the therapies that we've done, both of them have done, but I would say that just because in some ways, if you're going to go to this doctor, you might as well take both, kind of thing. But I would say that there's definitely been differing results between the two of them. For James, I mean, diet was just absolutely huge. I fought it for a long time because it would have been very, very hard to get the rest of the family on board early on, and kind of knew that I probably couldn't just, you know, handle every single piece of it myself while constantly threatening both their father, my husband at the time, and his mom and my mom and everybody else to not feed, anyway. So we got started a little bit later on really strict diet stuff. We did some things at the beginning that were relatively simple, but in terms of a much stricter diet. And for Nathan, I would say it doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of difference. We, removed did a big inflammatory test with 170 different foods and chemicals for both of them, and removed all of the red and yellow foods for about 2 years. And for Nathan, if he goes and sneaks an entire box of Ritz crackers, it probably doesn't make any difference at all. And with James, it's a huge difference. I mean, it was just kind of night and day when he started really getting all of the gastro stuff figured out. That made a huge, huge difference. And I know that that can be a really scary thing. So that is one of the things with Martha's Ranch that I would like to do as time permits and we get, more people out there, as I would love to help moms that are scared of the diet. And if you get the test, kind of go through and, okay, so how can you modify the recipes that you know your kids like? What are good substitutes? How can you modify things in order to make that work? Because it did make such a huge difference for James.
Yeah, would you say that was your biggest struggle, the dietary challenges, or what was your initial
I mean,
response challenges?
I guess communication's really probably always been the biggest piece. Is just,
Yeah.
I'm gonna like to be able to have a conversation with your kids, and that happens with Nathan a little bit now, but still, a little more mostly functional communication. And James is just he's hard to understand, so he definitely says things, and we can do some sign stuff, and he makes things pretty clear. But you definitely, definitely not at a conversational point. And I think probably the hardest piece is just sometimes you can tell like he's got a paragraph ready to come out of his mouth, but can't say it. So that's been that's probably the hardest part is just as a mom when you don't quite know what to do or how to help or what they're thinking. So
Yeah, yeah, I often say that we speak two different languages, and I've had to learn to speak Joseph, and he's had to learn to speak mom. And we just, I mean, now Joseph is 32 years old, right? So we kind of have it down, but it's interesting because I still have to ask him for clarification quite often on what he means, you know,
mhm.
and he does for me too. So I don't always make myself clear in his language, but yeah, I think communication is a big one that I hear and that I also experience still to this day. So we're talking about Martha's Ranch and some of the things that you would like to do with it, which dietary is one of those. Why did you start this foundation?
So as you mentioned in the beginning, my business has been real estate and some other associated companies. We've got a materials business and other things for those properties, but business has been good. And so we've gotten to do things and go places and experience things that would be hard to do if you didn't have much budget for it. Okay, so really wanted other families to have some of that. Really the day that really the Martha's Ranch idea really started was a day that my brother-in-law was in town around Christmas, right before Christmas, and was staying at Great Wolf Lodge, which is not far from our house. And so we got some day passes to go over to Great Wolf Lodge while they were there and go to the water park. And I think the boys were probably 12 then. They're 17 now, so about 12 maybe. And, if with a typical 12-year-old, a day at Great Wolf Lodge is a very, very simple thing. Hey, go have fun. I'll be drinking a margarita in the hot tub. Come check in once an hour or so. See you in a while. Whereas with two autistic kids, you have to constantly worry about kind of just what things are going to happen. Are they going to turn around too quickly and knock some kid over and then get screamed at by some parent and have no idea whatever, are they going to wait in line or not? And so it was just a very, very involved day, and it was great. We had a good time, but then James decided he wanted to go back a couple days later, and it was sold out and various things. So that proved to be a little bit complicated. So there were some things that actually a lot of that kind of triggered the diet things because we had a multiple meltdown day that was definitely one, where you kind of had to think of what other things you could do. Needed to find some new solutions, and so that's really where a lot of the diet started. And we've had a doctor that does gastrointestinal stuff that's been hugely helpful for him too. So but a
Mhm.
lot of it really was from that day. And so we wanted to create a place that families could go, that you're surrounded by other families that understand that whatever is unexpected is more likely to happen than not.
Yeah.
And these things just happen, and also create, activities and things. So one of the first things that we bought was some bounce house slides so that your kid can just go up and down and in a loop for, an hour and end up completely exhausted. And you might actually be able to have a conversation with another parent or read a book or think for a minute because you don't have to worry about kind of where they went and what's going on. So that was really, really it, is wanted to kind of create a place that families could go and just, where everybody kind of was around that understood.
Yeah, and so I'm guessing that now when did you start this foundation? Is this fairly new?
It's fairly in 2020 and is when we started the foundation, and then we found the land that we have our ranch on now, later in the year in 2020. And so, started building. We finally got the first of the villas really occupiable kind of right at the end of last summer. And now we have seven. So we try to do some big autistic events just for, daytime events, and then have weekends that are reserved completely for autistic communities. Because of the expense of putting everything together, we do some VRBO and Airbnb and things in the meantime at other times to
Sure.
try to accommodate with, and, just make sure that the families that are coming understand that, we may have some of the autism families there as well, but we haven't been able to convert to 100% of mission just yet. Just trying to make sure that we get everything paid for. So.
Yeah, well, I went, and of course, this was one of the big reasons we invited you to be here, because when I started looking at what Martha's Ranch is all about and how beautiful that it is, I think that the parents, moms in particular that are listening, are really going to be curious and want to check you out, because I think Martha's Ranch, not only is it beautiful, but it sounds like a safe space that
Mhm.
we can all go and really truly get to relax, like you said, and have a conversation. What do you think makes Martha's Ranch different from maybe some other places?
Well, I guess one of the things is I've used a lot of my prior experiences in sort of some of the design and setup of everything. So, especially in the villas, we have extra different locks that you can use. So, we've got extra locks. We've got locks on the pantry because we've dealt with special diet things and making sure that your kids don't get into stuff they're not supposed to have. So, we've got special locks on various things. We've got some chimes and things that can go on the doors. We did put in a solenoid switch. I learned one time that they had a really good time getting up in the middle of the night at one point and overflowed their bathtub. And that made for some sheetrock repairs in the kitchen below. So sort of for our special autism room, we have a solenoid switch that'll actually shut off water to everything except the toilet at night if you want to. We also have a switch that can turn off power to everything other than the outlets to charge things if you want to. I mean, they can be on or off or whatever else. And there's a lot of families that don't need them, but there's definitely some that do. And so we tried to really kind of put a lot of those touches in there. We've got furniture that's very comfortable, but relatively indestructible and not awful. Anyway, so we've really tried to kind of put thought into those things. We've got our activity center really has a lot of, we've got a lot of the bounce houses. We're still working on finishing out that building. It just got put up earlier this year, really. So we had basically just a slab last fall, and then finally got everything kind of put up. So we're still working on finishing all of that out, but we've got all the bounce houses laid out in there. But we did add in some smaller sensory rooms. One of the things that we did years ago was hyperbaric oxygen. So we have a tank that we just happen to own. So we're planning on putting that in one of the small rooms if any parents ever want to actually test something like that out and try it. Since we already had it, figured it would be a good thing for other people to be able to see or experience. Kind of a lot of those kind of pieces is really what we've been trying to go for.
Yeah, I think I saw this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I coach a lot of moms too, that their kids go through, they always say, well, he's a runner or she's a runner. So is this, and I'm pretty sure I saw that this is something that you also thought of
Mhm.
to let parents know that if you do have a child that's going through that runner phase throughout their autism journey, that you actually have taken care or have some ideas on that as well.
We do. We have a coded lock that slides across at the top of the door, and we do have chimes on the windows. We did make sure that the patio areas are fully fenced. So if a parent wants to lock that off to provide an extra deterrent, made sure fences are high enough that they're not easily climbed over and those sorts of pieces on all the villas. So definitely, we experienced some of that with Nathan at one point. He would wait till like everybody was trying to load up and get in the car to go to church, and he'd take off running. So one of the things that's been particularly helpful for us in that is they have geobit trackers on their
Mhm.
shoes. It's also helpful for knowing where they are on the bus route on the way home and how soon you have to be prepared to unlock the front door. But so those are really helpful. At some point, we're going to look to try to, we've reached out once, but haven't really gotten very far yet. But we're going to try to reach out to GeoBit and see if there's something that we can do so that even guests would be able to use those when they're there. So they, try it out and whatever. I think it would be a good collaboration for everybody to be safe while they're at our property, but then also something that could be really helpful for our parents when they get home.
Yeah, I love that. I think I hear anyone who's listening to this go, phew, oh my gosh, a place that I can actually go. And it sounds like you have really thought long and hard about this design. And I am sad that there aren't more places like this out there. Why do you think that is? What's lacking for families in our country that we really struggle with doing what seems to be family events, activities?
I think a lot of it is they're all just a, a lot of the places that you go on family events are really they can be kind of crowded and overwhelming. So that definitely can add to pieces as well. One of the other travel things that we did that our family really enjoyed is we actually have been on some Autism on the Seas cruises. And so, especially when you get the staff cruise, if it's not the staff cruise, it's a little bit different. But on the staff cruise, that was a really, really cool uh, place to do things with just an extra set of hands. So you got a little bit of break and a little bit of whatever it was. So that was a nice thing too. And so over time, as we're able to kind of staff up a little bit more, we'd like to have a little bit more respite opportunities. And right now it's basically just, a place for families to go themselves. But hopefully we'll get to some of those things. I know too, my boys go to some camps and it's been really hard to get spaces. I mean, they've been some for many, many years. And that's been great. But I mean, even they've gone to Adams Camp out in Colorado a couple times. And then this year they're just they couldn't get in despite having been before. So I know that there's a lot of camp spaces that just are really, really hard to find.
So getting back to your vision for Martha's Ranch, where do you see this going and what's your big vision here?
I think really the big vision here is to have a place that families can come and just really be supported. And so the more that we can get to where we have the times that are just autism families is fantastic. And we'll try to use, other outside sources and whatever to keep the costs down for the families. Cause that's a big piece of it too, is obviously it costs a lot to do all of this. And so, but a lot of families don't have huge budgets. And so we've been trying to really work on getting some corporate events in so that we can then do discounted weekends for $100 a night or whatever for families to be able to come in. And so we do have those discounted weekends that we really try to bring everybody together. We've had a couple families that have actually stayed twice already that are autism families, which is fantastic. One of them actually wanted to come. We had just one of our daytime events, and she's like, I really wanted to come, but I think he would have completely not understood why we didn't get to stay and why. And so
Yeah.
I decided it was just easier not to. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry to hear that. But anyway, so I mean, it's been a really, really good experience. The kids have enjoyed getting to see the animals. We do some animal feeding tours and stuff where they can go feed the chickens and go see the cows get fed and learn about those sorts of things. Some of them really enjoy the animals, others just really enjoy the UTV ride. So that's fun as well. Um,
Now
but
it
those are
sounds like a wonderland to me, especially when you're in that stage where you're really, really looking for somewhere safe to
Mhm,
go with your kids. I think
for
it's
sure.
wonderful.
Try
Um,
to find activities that don't exhaust the parents, that maybe wear the kids out and don't exhaust the parents. So that's kind of
uh,
part of the goal.
oh, perfect. Perfect. What are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned as a mom on this journey?
I mean, I suppose some of it is what my mom told me a little bit about parenting long, long ago. So I guess it applies just as much to typical kids, but she was like, everything is a phase. The really bad ones don't last forever, and the really good ones don't last forever either. So just enjoy the enjoy the good ones, get through the bad ones, try to not take it for granted, find the good in it. I would say definitely, find some respite time to however you can manage to do that. I mean, even if it's just getting your kid to go to bed early or whatever. I think those are a lot of pieces to really kind of support. It's hard to do the research. It is a very isolating thing for parents. I mean, like I was talking about with Great Wolf Lodge, they would get invited to a birthday party and it's a challenge, especially with two of them. I mean, even more so, I guess. But, chasing two kids around a birthday party, making sure that they don't do something they're not supposed to, eat something they're not supposed to, whatever. And then you don't really get to visit with the other parents in the same way. So it feels like a whole lot of effort that's absolutely exhausting at the end of the day that, you're like, I'm not really sure if that was worth it or not. But, they've had a good time sometimes. So that's, so I try to I challenge myself with those things sometimes too. But I think that's the biggest thing is just there's some really struggling times, but there's some really good times too. And so enjoy the times that are on the easier end. And when you encounter one of the harder things, try to reach out to somebody, do some research, hear other things, find a break for yourself, whatever it is that, to kind of keep going because you're best for your kids when you have a little bit of your time to reset and refresh as well.
Yeah, and I think that's why, Martha's Ranch is so wonderful because there is a place now
Mhm.
that folks can come to, and I think it's really important. I think one of the things that I love about doing this podcast is that I get to meet other moms, and it's just really fascinating and courageous that when we see a problem and we know how to help, we take our gifts and then we create something that helps other parents that are on this
Mhm.
autism journey as well. And you're one of those moms. And I'm going to say, thank you on behalf of all of us for creating this place. And I know it's young. You started
Mhm.
this
It
in
is.
2020, and I know that this is just gonna like take off like crazy, and you're gonna be so busy. I would like to ask you, is there anything else you would like to mention before we go?
I don't know that there's anything else in particular, but we would definitely love to have more guests at events. Please spread the word. Your families would love followers on Facebook and those sorts of things so that we can really kind of get the word out. If you've got any favorite activities for your kids or certain safety things that maybe are, maybe are not the things that my kids did or whatever that are ideas, definitely welcome any of those things too for future planning. And it's taken a while to get all of kind of the original vision. Well, and it's still the vision's big, so it's going to take a long time to get that really done. But at least having it to a place where people can really come and stay, and the families that have been able to so far just have really, really enjoyed it. I think it's been a really nice break. It's been a peaceful setting. We've tried to make sure that everything's relatively indestructible, so that you don't have to worry too much about kind of what happens. And anyway, so that's trying to make a good place for families to really come and decompress and enjoy and get to see something that's really outside of what they have. I mean, we had guests this weekend that, I mean, they're not from far away. They're in DFW as well, and so really only hour and a half probably from our location. But that we're like, yeah, no, our kids have never really seen outside of subdivision type things and stores and that sort. So seeing hundreds of acres of open space and longhorn cattle roaming around and getting to see the baby Hereford calves and watch the chickens run around, it's just a very different experience getting to walk around there too.
And, I haven't personally been there, but I did go to your website and I thought, wow, the places, the lodging that you have is just beautiful. It really would feel like a really, really nice vacation for families. And then, it's just really, really, really gorgeous, guys. You need to check it out. Where can we go to find you? How do we find you, give you our suggestions, and make a reservation?
Sure, marthasranch.org is the website. And so from there, you can get linked to all sorts of things. You can communicate with Christy, who's our director, and she'll get any ideas and whatever brought to all of us. And, Twin Canyons Ranch is really what the ranch is itself, and Martha's Ranch is the foundation piece. So those are kind of two different pieces to things, but there's some additional information on activities and that sort of piece on Twin Canyons Ranch as well. And so we're always just looking for more families to come out and join us when they're able to.
Well, that sounds lovely. I love, love, love this idea. And I've talked to enough families that I know this is a great, great need for us. Because I'm always, talking about moms getting rest. Well, now we have a place to come. So thank you so much for being on A Mother's Guide Through Autism podcast. And I hope that we'll get an update from you very soon. And I personally would like to invite any of you that are listening, if you enjoyed this episode, to like and our YouTube channel, Mother's Guide Through Autism. Please like it, love it. Let us know what you think. We want to hear from you. And it's been my complete honor. See you in the next episode.